Hey, it's Coach Anderson from Mississippi Public Broadcasting Online U.S. History from 1877 to present. Today we're going to pick up with a review of U.S. history. Now, we've talked to you at great length about how important that U.S. history test is. It is the most important test in my mind because it is the one, of course, that sets the stage for you becoming a senior. If you get this behind you, we know that senior year you'll be able to enjoy and it'll be smooth sailing. Today what we're going to do is we're going to pick up with lesson 6, and it's going to be standard for World War I. Now, we've talked about World War I, of course, in the lessons that we've provided you previously. And what we're going to do is go back and hit some of the high points and make sure that you have a good understanding about what is important and what maybe not quite so important. But first, what we'll start to do, of course, is look at the map blueprint. Now, one of the things that we've told you about the map blueprint, of course, it tells you the approximate weight of the standards on the test. And if you look, the contemporary United States, which is objectives, standards 10, 11, and 12, and those 12 objectives, of course, that go in line with them, those are the most important ones when it comes to the weight of the test. So it'd be in your best interest to go through and look at this blueprint so you'll know exactly where the test items are coming from. We'll start with the Mississippi Standard. Now, we're going to look at primarily U.S. History Standard 4 from the Mississippi Department of Education standards. And what we're looking at are the map standards that we have in Mississippi. And we're looking at imperialism and World War I, which we've already addressed imperialism. And today we'll pick up a little bit with World War I. And what it says is assess the domestic and foreign developments that contribute to the emergence of the United States as a world power in the 20th century. So with that, we'll go ahead and we'll begin. We'll start with the causes of the World War I. It starts, of course, with an incident, and the incident in this particular case is the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife, Sophie, were assassinated in Sarajevo by Gavrilo Princip, a member of the Serbian nationalist group, the Black Hand. This event triggered a series of diplomatic crises leading to the Austro-Hungary declaring war on Serbia, and the system of alliances rapidly pulled other nations into the conflict, turning a regional dispute into a world war. One of the things that, oftentimes that we don't point out, there were problems in the Balkans in this particular region before all of this happens with the assassination of Ferdinand. But when Ferdinand is assassinated, it just kind of snowballs. The previous tensions that they had started to boil over. And as a result, because of the system of alliances, larger nations will be pulled into the conflict when this started out as being only a regional conflict. The causes of WWI. The war was sparked by a combination of militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. These causes have often been summarized by an acronym MAIN. Militarism is the buildup of military forces and an arms race among European powers. The alliances, the Triple Entente, France, Russia, and the United Kingdom, and the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. Imperialism, the intense competition for colonies and global dominance, and then nationalism, national pride, and tensions, especially in the Balkans, that escalated into violence. Remember, one easy way to remember, what the causes of WWI is an acronym MAIN. All right, trench warfare and the stalemate on the Western Front. And once again, we're just going to highlight some of the things, about World War I, of course, that makes it such an intriguing war. Much of the fighting on the Western Front was characterized by trench warfare, where soldiers dug extensive defensive networks. The trench lines stretched from the English Channel to Switzerland, and the conditions were horrendous: mud, rats, disease, and constant bombardment. This led to a stalemate with little territorial change and high casualties on both sides. The war became a grueling test of endurance and survival. The thing that we could tell you, the reason why the war dragged on so long was because of the trench warfare. Now, the reason why we had trench warfare was the fact that, armies had to dig in, because now war was so brutal. With the invention of the machine gun, anybody that made an advance on the enemy, of course, could be cut down in that area between the trenches becomes known as no man's land, because anybody that tried to go from one trench to the other one could get cut down by machine gun fire. The role of technology and weapons. World War I introduced modern military technology, which radically changed warfare. Machine guns made offensive charges difficult and deadly, hence the stalemate on the Western Front. Tanks provided mobility on the battlefield. Though initially ineffective, they eventually are the thing that breaks up the stalemate on the Western Front by being able to allow armies to overrun trenches. Poison gas caused horrific injuries and panic among soldiers. Airplanes used for reconnaissance, bombing, and dogfights. These weapons caused massive casualties and made the war more brutal than previous conflicts. And that's one of the things that contributes to World War I being called the Great War. U.S. neutrality and shift to intervention. Now, at the beginning of World War I, the United States of America was not involved. It was a policy that we adapted of neutrality under President Woodrow Wilson. Key events leading to intervention included the sinking of the Lusitania, Germany's unrestricted submarine warfare, and the Zimmermann Telegram in 1917. And in the Zimmermann Telegram, what basically happened is what you see here, of course, in the cartoon. You have Kaiser Wilhelm on the left over here, who's whispering in the ear of some of the Mexicans, and what he wants to do is says, join with Germany, you'll get back a bit of the United States. All of that land that the United States of America had ceded, that had been gained by the United States of America from the Mexican Cession, places like California, places like parts of Utah, parts of New Mexico, those places were promised back to Mexico if they would intervene in the war on the side of Germany. The United States of America finds out about it, and it pushes America even closer toward war. The role of selective service and propaganda. So when the United States of America does get involved in the war, and the Selective Service Act was passed to draft soldiers and quickly build an army to support the Allies. Over 24 million men registered for the draft, and nearly 3 million were called into service. The Committee on Public Information was established to influence public opinion in favor of the war. Propaganda was used to encourage enlistment, sell bonds, and garner support for wartime policies. An example would be iconic propaganda posters like what you see here from James Montgomery flag, and what it basically says is, I want you for the U.S. Army. This is a kind of strange, poster here, because if you look at those eyes, and no matter where you go in the room, you can walk over here, you can walk over there. It just seems like those eyes just follow you everywhere. It's kind of one of those illusions, and this makes it so haunting and so effective, of course, in getting Americans to get behind the war effort. The war economy and mobilization. The U.S. economy quickly shifted to a wartime footing, with industries retooling to produce weapons and munitions and supplies. The War Industry Board oversaw this transition, directing resources and production to meet military needs. The impact, the U.S. became the arsenal for democracy, providing crucial supplies to the Allied forces. So the United States of America, though we weren't in the war in the beginning of the war, we were in a position that we more or less supported Great Britain and France to a lesser degree, and we actually provided supplies to both sides. But at the end of the day, the United States of America had more in common, a more historical connection with Britain and France, and when we do get involved in the war, the Germans kind of felt like we were going to probably get in the war on the side of Great Britain and France, which we eventually did. The American Expeditionary Force and General John Blackjack Pershing. The American Expeditionary Force, led by General Pershing, arrived in Europe in 1917. U.S. troops played a significant role in turning the tide of war, particularly at the Battle of Argonne Forest. In 1918, helping to push back the German forces, the impact was the AEF was instrumental in the Allied victory and cemented the U.S. role as a world power. And have a picture of the American soldiers in World War I called the Doughboys, and then the leader of the American Expeditionary Force was General John Blackjack Pershing. 14 points in Wilson's vision for peace. Well, one of the things that World War I taught us is the fact that we did not want to fight another war like this. And President Woodrow Wilson, who was a little bit of an academic, laid out a vision that he thought that if we followed these 14 individual points, that if we followed these things, that we could possibly avoid another war like this from happening again. So he laid out a vision for lasting peace, emphasizing self-determination, open diplomacy, free trade, and the establishment of a League of Nations. Wilson's idealistic goals sought to prevent future conflicts and promote international cooperation. Now, the thing about the 14 points, they were well thought out and addressed some of the very issues, of course, that started the war. But the only problem was the United States of America, during the early years of World War I, we were an isolationist country that believed in neutrality, and even after the war, the United States of America, most of the people in the United States of America wanted to return to that. They didn't want to have entanglements that would draw the United States of America into another conflict like this one, because you have to understand, millions of people died in this great war called World War I. The Treaty of Versailles and the U.S. Senate rejection. One of the things that we said that the United States of America wanted to return to isolationism and neutrality. The Treaty of Versailles officially ended World War I in 1919, but faced opposition in the United States Senate. The irreconcilable senators were a group of senators that believed the United States of America should not be tied to what the affairs of what was going on in Europe. And as a result, because we would be required to approve of the League of Nations, they decided that they would not ratify the Treaty of Versailles. The rejection reflected the nation's reluctance to becoming entangled in European affairs. The impact of the war on civil liberties and anti-war sentiment. During the war, the government passed laws like the Espionage Act of 1917 and the Sedition Act, which curtailed civil liberties and suppressed dissent. Anti-war sentiment, especially from groups like socialists, pacifists, and labor unions, was harshly criticized and sometimes persecuted. U.S. Involvement in World War I had a profound effect on the country, shaping its future foreign policy, economy, and social landscape. While the U.S. emerged as a global power, the rejection of Treaty of Versailles and the League of Nations set the stage for the return to isolation in the 1920s, and the United States of America did not get involved. So one of the things that we try to do is give you some highlights about World War I and the U.S. involvement in it, and what we have for you is a list of historical facts. And at the end of each one of these lessons, what we try to do is give you these historical facts that you should master. Because if you're going to do well on the test, there's a baseline of knowledge that you have to have. And these are some of the things. Now, one of the things that we told you, that's a lot, of course, for a person to kind of take in. And the easiest way to learn a lot of content fast is by the creation of flashcards. And we give you an example after each one of these lessons of what you could do, of course, to complete these flashcards. And remember, when you have these flashcards, you can get help, from anyone, of course, to study, and you can study at any time. All right, that is the end of lesson 6 on World War I. What we hope to do is give you a working knowledge of what the U.S. involvement in the war was, what were the causes of it, and what impact it had on the United States of America post, WW I. We hope you were able to gain some insights, and go back and get those fact lists, create those flashcards, and go to work. Remember what we said now. It is very important that you do well on the U.S. history test, because it's the last major test that you have to take before graduation. With that, this is Coach Anderson from Mississippi Public Broadcasting Online, U.S. History from 1877 to present, and we'll see you next time.